Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular business meeting for February 19th. Hopkins, Squamish, please Philp, Plots, Squamish, Owirmail. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. We have an amended agenda before us, Council. There was some updated minutes that have been provided to you. So I'll motion to approve the amended agenda. Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Any notices of motion? Seeing none. We start tonight with two delegations. The first is Ruth Simons from the Howe Sound Biosphere Region Initiative Society. Welcome, Ruth.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Very good to see you. My presentation is going to be short. It's just a brief summary on the update of our progress on our initiative for Howe Sound Region to be designated by UNESCO as a Biosphere region. Also to just give a little bit update on the Howe Sound Community Forum. Last year, I think it was February 2017, when Squamish, District of Squamish Council resolved to support the Howe Sound Biosphere Region Initiative. This is a long process, it's a long-term process, but we are making progress. We are currently at the stage of starting to compile our nomination document with the ambitious aim to have it submitted to UNESCO and then on to Paris this year. There's going to be a wonderful story of the region of Howe Sound. We are working, it's a volunteer group, but we are working with a broad range of people that are contributing to the document. The UNESCO Biosphere Reserve Association has welcomed us into the group, so we feel like we're part of the family already. And I'm always happy to answer any questions around it, or if there's any interest in engaging in this nomination process. Areas that we focus on are, of course, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and advancing the conversation around that. UNDRIP, of course, the participation and support of the Squamish Nation are extremely important in this process. And there are other United Nations programs that we will be furthering the conversation on, especially on biodiversity, conservation, and so on. Just in case we're not haven't seen this map, this is the proposed boundary. It does follow the same boundary as the cumulative effects assessment that the province is just completed after 5 years now of working on the cumulative effects assessment. So the boundary is it's the Squamish Nation territory. It goes from Lighthouse Park, or actually it's going to be more like where the Pacific Science Enterprise Center is, over to Gibson's. And then up just follows a watershed, partial watershed up just below Whistler. So I said if there's any questions further about that, I can update you. And then also with the initiative, we're looking to probably re-invite the council to support our application, and once it's complete in draft form, then we will be circulating it widely. The Howe Sound Community Forum, of course, many of you have attended that forum in the years past. We are planning the next one for April 26th, the Islands Trust. We're again seeking support for ongoing participation at the forum. We also always ask and invite District of Squamish to be a host. I think the last time the district hosted was, I should have got that date, but could have been 2016, I think. And that's all I have, right? So, thank you.
Any questions for?
Can we assume that it matters pertaining to governance and definition and boundary are still in draft, and the draft package that will be presented to us when you're ready will allow for opportunity to refine or discuss further some of these elements?
I think right now the boundary, if there are any questions or wishes to expand the boundary, shrink the boundary, those are conversations we should be having now. So far, we haven't had any requests for any changes. So certainly at the point where we submit our document, that is the, that's the boundary that we're going with. In terms of the governance, yes, there's going to be a draft fairly shortly coming out for comment. Yeah.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
Councillor Stoner?
Could you speak a little bit more to the intersection between the Howe Sound Biosphere Region Initiative, the Howe Sound Community Forum, and the Ocean Watch Task Force, and how those different entities interact?
Yeah. I think where we're at today is because of the collaboration between all of the different organizations and communities around the Sound. I have coordinated the Howe Sound Community Forums for the last 5 years. The Howe Sound Biosphere Region Initiative is intended to be an organization that will help with succession of people that contribute to organizing and collaborating and coordinating groups around the Sound. The Howe Sound Community Forum is a forum for the elected officials. It was established in 2000, so the members of that forum are the elected. There are other forums that go on around that involve and engage more other stakeholders. The Ocean Watch, Fiona is going to be explaining that a little bit more, but the Ocean Watch Task Force, again, was born out of the Howe Sound Forum. So it's elected officials sitting at the table with non-government organizations. And essentially, we're all having a conversation towards keeping this an amazing place and furthering our conservation efforts, our sustainable development goals, and reconciliation. Does that answer your question?
Thank you so much for coming. Oh,
Just been following this project for quite a while, and I'm really pleased with it. And thank you for all the work you do in this. I'm just wondering, the next Howe Sound Forum after April, would that be in the fall or it would be next year?
Yeah, typically in October. And if we're looking for a host.
Would it be inappropriate to direct staff to talk to the forum about hosting the fall meeting at this point and to see what that would involve?
Patty volunteered us last time.
We can look into it, certainly.
We'll bring you back.
Yeah, I'll bring it.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
These are really important initiatives, and I look forward to seeing it progress to the point of submission this year. That's exciting. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Next up, Fiona Beaty on the Marine Reference Guide. Ruth, how do you pronounce the Howe Sound name in notes?
A kitsem?
A kitsem.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much for having me here today. My name's Fiona Beaty, and I'm the project director for the Howe Sound Kitsem Marine Reference Guide, which is a project that is co-governed by the Ocean Watch Task Force in the Squamish Nation, and then led by a steering committee with representatives from marine sectors in the Sound and governments in the Squamish Nation. So I'm here today to kind of give you an update on this project. Last year, the District of Squamish passed financial support toward the reference guide over the next 3 years. So partially in gratitude for that, and partially to kind of inform the new councillors on this project. I'm here to kind of give an overview and answer any questions that you have. So the objective of this initiative is to create a decision support tool to support governments, First Nations, marine spatial planners, and different sectors in the Sound so that we can progress forward with a holistic vision of what our marine environment, what are human activities in the marine environment, and so that we can ensure that sector planning is linked within a regional framework. So this project is kind of following along many of the same objectives of the Biosphere Initiative in terms of bringing groups into this regional framework and ensuring that we have information that extends beyond the boundary of a local government, for example. So some of the goals we have are to strengthen collaboration between governments and community members, and then to build capacity to protect and restore our marine environment. So one of the deliverables that we'll be producing is an online interactive map. And we're not trying to sort of create this out of nowhere. We were inspired by an initiative on the west coast of Vancouver Island conducted through the West Coast Aquatic Association, and what they did was they produced an online map that collated hundreds of data layers and then provided it in a way where you could see the overlap of different uses. So on the slide here we can see in green it's the ecologically significant areas that they identified based on their data available and an analysis, and then tourism and recreation areas. So this tool can help support planning. It is not binding, it's just providing information for agencies to then go on and use in your own purposes. Another thing that they created was a list of documents to kind of go through each area and decide which activities they would or wouldn't recommend. And these documents were agreed upon by the steering committee, which, like ours, has a representation from a variety of different sectors, from tourism and industry and conservation and research, local governments and First Nations. So it's providing that sort of holistic governance structure, or building relationships in that way. This is an image from our steering committee, and Sarah McJanet is representative on that from the District of Squamish, so we're very appreciative of her participation. And essentially our main outcome will be to build capacity in this region so that we can progress forward to address issues that this region might encounter, such as population growth and increased visitation, in a way that doesn't compromise the ecological integrity that we value. So thankfully this is kind of a snapshot of what our region's map may look like. This is an example of a map that two organizations have put together over the last year to document ecological data, and the reference guide will build into this map all of the important human use layers that take a few more years to gather. So we can see here there's an outline of streams that salmon use to spawn, and then eelgrass data. So it's a good opportunity to use this in planning and as well as community education and encouraging stewardship of our marine environment. Kind of to go off of Councillor Stoner's question of where this fits in, this is one visual that helps to contextualize this initiative in amongst all of the varying other initiatives, and to give you a sense of where it comes from. So in 2017, there was a report published by the Coastal Ocean Research Institute named the Ocean Watch Howe Sound Edition. And what that report did was it pulled together a bunch of information about various ecological and human use indicators and gave them a status. And then that catalyzed the formation of the Ocean Watch Task Force, which came out of the forum, which is providing the governance structure for this project. And we hope that the reference guide will feed into regional and community initiatives such as the Squamish Marine Action Strategy, as well as the Squamish Nation's Marine Use Plan, the province's Cumulative Effects Assessment. Our goal is to support as many planning and community engagement and stewardship initiatives as we can with this information. And I can just highlight the three components that relate specifically to the District of Squamish. So with that, this is a demonstration of the support that we have from the community. All of the 9 local governments in Howe Sound have passed support toward this initiative. So we're very thankful for that, and I welcome any questions that you might have.
Any questions? Councillor Anderson?
Before I answer your question regarding the section administrative body, I'd just like to point out that I find that your language and presentation in this report is very noteworthy for the care in its even-handed treatment of all stakeholders and values and it to quite a rare standard. It's very good, and I wish to acknowledge that. My question is, it's stated here the Marine Reference Guide is a project on the Tides Canada shared platform, and that Tides Canada has full fiduciary and governance responsibility for the Marine Reference Guide. I wonder if you might elaborate a bit on that. You also discuss or present the steering committee and that framework. And how is that Tides Canada role perhaps different than on the west coast of the island? I'm not familiar with the relationships there.
Yes, that's a great question. So on the with West Coast Aquatic, they formed their own nonprofit to conduct this work, whereas in Howe Sound, we have selected to work with Tides Canada, which is a national charity, who supports initiatives such as this one through their shared platform. And for the duration of the project, the Howe Sound Marine Reference Guide is that Tides Canada has ownership over its deliverables, we could say, and the project's timeline is 3 years. So for the next 3 years, we're a project on Tides Canada's platform, and then following that time, we'll have to figure out a longer-term strategy or home for this resource, transition it to either a local government or a local nonprofit, or form our own nonprofit. But rather than forming our own nonprofit from the get-go, we decided to go through Tides. The other advantage of working through Tides is that they provide expertise and administrative support, and they're also a method of leveraging funding from a number of different sources because they have charitable status. So we saw it as a good opportunity to work with them. They have a number of different resources that they provide.
Thank you.
All right. All right, we're good. Thank you so much for the update.
Thank you.
Consideration of unscheduled public attendance. Seeing none, we'll move on to our public hearing. So we have one public hearing tonight. It's for District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011, 1080 Wilson Crescent. So I have an opening statement that I have to read. I'm going to jazz this up in the future. This public hearing is convened pursuant to Part 14, Division 3 of the Local Government Act to allow the public to make representations to council respecting matters contained in the proposed District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200, 2011, amendment bylaw 1080 Wilson Crescent number 2371, 2015. Everyone present shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. No one will be discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that remarks be restricted to matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Members of council may ask questions following presentations. However, the function of council at a public hearing is to listen rather than to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw. In considering the proposed bylaw, council has received documents which may influence its decision. These documents are available for review and comment and have been included as part of the planning department report, or if received later, handed out at the meeting and included in the public hearing package. And I believe, council, that there is a blue document that you received related to this public hearing. If any documents are submitted during the hearing, please feel free to review the document during the hearing by asking staff. Members of the public shall maintain order and quiet and shall not applaud or interrupt any speech or action of members of council or any other person addressing council. And with that, I now call on the planning department to introduce the bylaw.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jonas Valniškis. I'm the Director of Community Planning. I'll be presenting this application for public hearing on behalf of Philp, who's the planner that wrote the report. However, she was not able to join us tonight. So the property is located in the Wilson Crescent Dentville neighborhood, as seen in the map above. The official community plan land use designation is residential neighborhoods. The current zoning is multiple unit residential, RM2, and the surrounding neighborhood is predominantly zoned RM1 and RM2, so multifamily. The proposal is to rezone the lot from RM2 to a comprehensive development zone, CD 93, to allow for a small single-unit dwelling. The lot is triangular shaped and approximately 455 square feet in area. The proposed single-unit dwelling is shown here. It is a 3-story dwelling with a cupola above the 3rd story. An external stairway on the southeast side of the dwelling is proposed to access the upper stories. The ground floor is about 105 square feet, which contains an undersized parking space, 8 by 15 feet. The property is located in a flood hazard area, so no habitable floor area would be permitted on the ground floor. And the 2nd floor is 236 square feet in size, and the 3rd floor is the same. So the total habitable area would be around 472 square feet. The public hearing notices were sent to property owners and tenants within 100 meters of the subject property, and 2 newspaper ads were posted in the Squamish Chief on February 7th and 14th. To date, 1 public comment has been received, and then there's the additional submission. I believe it is from the applicant that council has in blue format. The other comment was received in 2015, and it was just questioning the use of a comprehensive development zone in this case. And I will turn it over back to you, council, for the hearing. Thank you.
I now invite the applicant or representative to comment on the proposed rezoning, after which persons affected will be given the opportunity to speak. After I've confirmed it is your turn, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given up to 5 minutes to address council. So, would the applicant or their representative like to speak tonight? Come forward and just state your name and address. That would be great.
Thank you. I'm Dan Nolan. I'm the owner of 1080 Wilson Crescent and the applicant in this rezoning. I've actually made all of the submissions I wanted to make in writing to the planner, some in memos addressed to the mayor and council and some to the planner. And the most recent one I delivered today was just an update on ongoing conversations about off-street parking, dealing with railroad noise, and an invasive species plan. So overall, I'm quite happy to go along with the recommendations of the council. I think that, or the planning department, I think that each of the things that are being done, that is the construction of drainage, the invasive plant plan, proper eye on railroad noise, and so on, are all going to result in a better building and a better environment. So I'm just happy to go along with what's going on in the neighborhood, because I look forward to getting my building built and settling in.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else present that would like to speak to this rezoning application? Council, maybe I'll ask if you have any questions of staff. Council Pettengill.
Just quickly, I apologize if this was asked last time, but we have in our resolution some conditions regarding the rail, but there's also some questions raised by BC Hydro, and I'm just wondering, that's something we deal with a different piece of the process, those concerns, or how do those BC Hydro concerns get addressed and monitored and so on?
For you, Mayor, BC Hydro concerns would get addressed through the building permitting process. When it comes to CN Rail, they provide comments, but there's not a lot of leverage that CN has, whereas BC Hydro they have lots of leverage to impose conditions that are on developments that are adjacent to their lines, essentially.
Any other questions, council? So I'll ask for the first time if there's anyone who wishes to make any further representations. For the second time, is there anyone who wishes to make any further representations? And for the third time, is there anyone who wishes to make any further representations? For being no further speakers, I would ask council if there is any further information that the planning department might provide in response to any comments or questions raised by the proponent tonight. Heard? Seeing none. Move on to the end, right? Seeing no further submissions, please note that council members are not permitted to receive further submissions or hear either a proponent or opponent to an application once the public hearing has been concluded. Any and all communication must be channeled to staff from this point forward. There being no further speakers, I declare the hearing closed. Thank you very much for your submissions.
Thank you.
So moving on in the agenda, the first item is the DVP for 141 to 146 Horizon Drive. I'm going to turn the chair over to Councillor Herford, who's acting mayor this month. I have a perceived conflict on this. It was a small piece of work for the proponent last year, and my children attend brand new school up there. So I recuse myself from this portion of the meeting.
Okay, so, thank you. The next matter before us is the development variance permit number 141, 142, 143, 144, 145, 146, collectively known as the Horizon Drive variances. The proponent and members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting the following request variances in the District of Squamish zoning bylaw. Section 40.xxx.6, minimum setbacks for principal buildings. Block C, front setback.
Yeah, there's 5. So.
There's a few here. So DP 141 is from 7.62 meters to 6 meters. DP 142 from 7.62 meters to 6 meters. DP 143 from 7.62 meters to 4.57 meters. DP 144 from 7.62 meters to 6 meters. DP 145 from 7.62 meters to 6 meters. DP 146 from 7.62 meters to 6 meters. After the presentation. Sorry.
That's, yeah, after the staff presentation.
So, okay. I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, Development and Subdivision Coordinator with Community Planning and Infrastructure. I'm here tonight to present development variance permits number 141 to 146. The subject properties are undeveloped single-family lots located at the north end of Horizon Drive in the Skyridge Subdivision. Zoning is Comprehensive Development Zone 83, and OCP land use designation is residential neighborhoods. Surrounding properties are zoned RS1. The subject properties were a former quarry and were rezoned in 2016 from Residential 1 to Comprehensive Development Zone 83, and then subsequently subdivided. Given that the subject property was once a quarry, the terrain is very steep in some sections of the subdivision. Development variance permit number 116 was approved in July 2016, which varied the front yard setback requirement for the duplex units along Horizon Drive from 7.62 meters to 6 meters. As seen on the above slide, the property line for the duplexes begins right at the edge of the roadway. The townhomes on Skyridge Place provide a minimum 6-meter driveway depth from the Strata Road. A sidewalk will be constructed in the boulevard along the frontage of the single-family lots on Horizon Drive. The front property lines for the single-family strata lots are set back approximately 3.5 meters from the actual roadway to accommodate the sidewalk and boulevard. A variance to the front setback requirements in Block C in the CD83 zone is requested to facilitate the construction of 6 single-family homes on Horizon Drive. The 6 lots are located on steep terrain. The intention behind the variance request is to move the buildable envelope closer to Horizon Drive to avoid the steep drop at the rear of the property and the need for large retaining structures. DVPs 141, 142, 144, 145, and 146 propose to vary the front yard setback from 7.62 meters, 25 feet, to 6 meters, 20 feet. A 6-meter front yard would allow for a driveway that meets the required 6-meter depth and could serve as surface parking. This would maintain flexibility for future homeowners should they wish to have a secondary suite and need to accommodate the additional parking space outside a garage. This slide shows the proposed site plan for Strata Lot 8. DVP 143 at 41337 Horizon Drive is requesting a variance to 4.57 meters, as this will reduce the width of the retaining wall that will be required to be constructed to retain the lot. The proponents have demonstrated the ability to still accommodate a 6-meter driveway on site by stepping back a portion of the garage. As the lots are so steep, the homes will require large concrete columns or similar structural elements to support the homes. Reducing the front yard setback will move the buildings away from the steep terrain, thereby reducing the amount of building envelope that will be built out over the steep slope. As a condition of each of the DVPs, there is a provision restricting development in the rear yard. The restriction essentially increases the rear yard setback the corresponding amount that the front yard setback is being reduced. This will ensure that the entire building envelope or buildable envelope is indeed being moved closer to the front of the lots. This slide shows a rendering of 41331 and 41337 Horizon Drive, Strata Lots 8 and 9, staff and the utility wall in between. Staff are confident that the reduced front setback on the Bearland Strata lots will not have a negative impact on pedestrian safety. Both pedestrian and vehicle traffic on the portion of Horizon Drive where the subject properties are located should be relatively low, given that the access to the duplexes occurs further south on the dead-end street, and access to the townhomes and sky suites occurs off of Skyridge Place. To support the variance, the proponent is proposing to provide plantings and spray-on moss on the large utility wall located between Strata Lots 8 and 9, as was previously just shown in the rendering. Planting to screen the west retaining wall facing the highway has commenced and should improve screening of the wall over time. In addition to the landscape treatments, the applicant has made a contribution towards a local trail connector between Dow Drive and Paracan Trail. The contribution in the amount of $15,000 should cover the majority of construction costs associated with the dual directional trail named Craig's Connector on Crown land, which has provincial approval to proceed. The proposed trail will connect to Dow Drive via an on-site trail that is being built on the new Montessori school site, which will have public access right of way as part of previous land use approvals for the Skyridge development. Staff support DVPs 141 to 146, as the reduced front yard will still allow for surface parking in front of the homes and move the buildings away from the steep slopes at the rear of the properties. This should help to minimize the size of the retaining and structural elements required to support the future homes, which should reduce the associated visual impact. Legislative and district processes for engagement were followed for this application. Notifications were mailed and hand-delivered to properties within 100 meters. 3 comments that do not support the requested variances have been received. Staff recommend that the District of Squamish authorize the issuance of development variance permits numbers 141 to 146 as presented, subject to securing the provision of landscape works and a commitment to build a majority portion of the connector trail between Dowd Drive and Bracken Trail, and that the mayor and corporate officer be authorized to execute development variance permits numbers 141 to 146. Staff alternatively recommend that the District of Squamish not authorize the issuance of development variance permits numbers 141 to 146, or that the development variance permits be referred back to staff. Oops, sorry. That concludes my presentation.
So, Council, I have Council Race.
Thank you. Could you go back to that slide that you just had up there just for a second? The overhead?
The overhead of the site plan of the entire subdivision.
Yeah. So I just wanted to confirm, because my understanding from the report is that with the lots where there's a variance, the sidewalk that I see there between the sidewalk and the homes will still be that 6-meter space? Is that correct?
So this variance through you, Mayor, the variance will not affect the boulevard. That 3.5 meter boulevard the front property line is set back 3.5 meters from the roadway. That's where the boulevard is. And the 6-meter setback is taken from that front property line shown in red.
Well, that's a boulevard. I thought it was the sidewalk.
The sidewalk and the boulevard are.
And the boulevard, okay. But there still is, in their driveway, there still is that 6 meters?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so if no further questions, Councilor Benny?
Yeah, a couple. What would be the consequences if we didn't approve this? I'm not fully clear on that. Would they not be able to build? They'd have to build smaller homes? There'd be a bigger retaining wall somewhere?
So if I may just bring up this rendering here. The proponents would still be able to build. It would be more challenging, and as you can see in this rendering here, this is the green wall here is the utility wall. This large retaining wall here is required to retain the lot. This rendering is shown if the variances were approved. So if you can imagine the buildings being pushed back further towards these steep slopes, that would require a larger retaining wall. These structural elements would require to become taller and potentially more unsightly. It would facilitate, obviously that would increase the cost of development as well. So that is another consideration. This isn't technically allowing for a larger floor area. It's just trying to minimize the amount of retaining walls in this subdivision where there is already a number of retaining walls, and minimizing these structural elements that are required as much as possible.
You also mentioned there's 3 comments. I thought that one of the, and I'm just trying to clarify the numbers here, one of them that I saw an email seemed to represent a number of homeowners in the area. So when you say 3, is that 3 sort of individual letters? Like, do we have a sense of how many people that's representing, or?
So the comments that I referenced, there was one comment from a specific homeowner, the letter that you saw from a number of homeowners, which I responded to, and then there was a follow-up letter from that same landowner who represented a number of homeowners. So don't think I have the letter in front of me right now, but it seemed to be around 7 or 8 homeowners who that person acted on behalf of. 5. Thanks.
Councilor Saunders?
Just a quick question with this photo. Where is Horizon Drive relative? So is this looking at it from Horizon, or is this looking at it from the back of the property?
This is looking at it from Dowa Drive to the back of the property. Horizon Drive is at the front of these homes that you can't see in this rendering.
I got myself on the list here. I'm curious, some of the process that led us to here. This is a new development that was fairly substantial. So when the layout was considered, did we not consider the steepness of these lots, or how did we get to where we are now? Can you speak to that?
If I may, for you, Mayor. Yes, the steepness was noted. However, at the time, our subdivision development bylaw wasn't designed to anticipate slope side development. We've since made a number of changes that would have impacted this subdivision, but this was one of those subdivisions that has triggered a number of changes in the bylaw.
So then, would it be safe to say that does this fit within those changes that you've made since that time?
Could you clarify?
The variances here, does that represent where we sort of are currently with our development permits on the steep slope?
The changes we made to the subdivision control bylaw, and Gary, you might know a bit more about that, but they're more about slopes and where lots can be created rather than the sizes of driveways.
Through the chair, yeah, the changes we've made to the bylaw would preclude this circumstance from happening again. It wouldn't want to see this sort of development on these sorts of slopes. So it would try and avoid this, not mitigate it. So it's coming at it from a slightly different point of view.
Councillor Stone.
Can you go back to the overhead map layout? And I just want to confirm that the sidewalk, so on the south end of Horizon Drive, that sidewalk extends all the way down, correct, past?
Yes. It was difficult to capture the entire site plan and have it zoomed in enough, but it continues right down to Dow.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Payne.
So two things. Is it fair to say that at the time, before the changes you were just speaking about, 7.6 meters was just our standard setback, and this variance, we would typically in the past, as well as now, deal with these things as they come and just generally grant the sort of adjustment looking at the site rather than try and understand every site ahead of time? And so this is a pretty standard practice sort of thing.
If I may, through Mayor, yeah, this 7.6 meter setback is kind of a standard setback. It is not uncommon for that to be varied depending on site-by-site basis.
And you mentioned the trail, but that's not technically attached to this variance. It's just, if the houses go ahead, the trails go ahead, but the variance itself is separate from the trail. Is that correct?
For you, Mayor. So as a kind of an amenity offer, the applicant has agreed to provide funding for the trail, but it is tied to the variance. It's part of the variance request, essentially.
Myself on there again. In the renderings I saw in the report, I didn't have a clear vision of the, so this shows most of the structure being below road grade. I would imagine that's the intent from the, for these lots. Is this, so is it safe to say that we'd enter, it would look like a bungalow from the uphill side, and then the levels would be below?
Yes.
That goes some way to mitigate my concerns about sight lines and stuff from the neighbors. So thank you. Yes, Councilor Finch.
Yeah, I'm interested to know these two images. Is this 41331 Horizon and 41337 Horizon?
Yes.
Okay.
Further question over to the. So, at this point, I'd like to invite anyone to speak to the matter before us. After I've confirmed it's your turn to speak, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and your address. Please note that the speakers will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address council. Does anyone would like to speak to this? Yes, sir.
I guess I did see, my name is Jamie Martin, I'm a design coordinator for Skyridge. I came in to do sort of with the design coordinating on this and before subdivision. Just a few things to point out. It was recommended at time of subdivision to move the houses forward more, but it wasn't done at the time. I don't know why. Also, when they did move the houses or the variances we're going for, I believe the rear setback line has been moved forward as well, so that people can't stretch the houses out if they wanted to. And also it's a dead-end street, so there's not a lot of traffic. So it was recommended by Beaty and Associates at the time of subdivision about the setbacks, and then it's not a busy road, so it would be okay to have a lesser driveway. So I just want to point out those few things.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Approach the podium.
Mayor, councilors, good to see you tonight. My name is Jason Wood from 3828 Vista Crescent from Hospital Hill. I'm the proponent and developer of Skyridge, and certainly through the past council, we've had many talks about all aspects of Skyridge. And certainly the west side of the development is a challenge from its elevation perspective. What we tried to do at Skyridge was never done before in Squamish. We put single-family houses, duplexes, townhouses, a condo, and built an elementary school on the site. So very wide array of buildings and building types for demographics, and certainly doing it on a mountainside has been a challenge from managing the elevations perspective. It's a bit funny because the development went through quite easily, and when these variances come up, they seem to pose more questions. But you know, we went into this, you know, obviously with the district and with our consultants and trying to plan the best we could about what to do on this side. And certainly with the steep slopes, we have houses that are exposed and they're going to be, you know, they're visible. What we're trying to do in this case, quite simply, is bring the houses closer to the road, which minimizes the impact of people below from the highways and things like that. So trying to put them into the mountainside a little bit closer. So really that's the main purpose of this variance. And since I did donate the money for the trail, I correct Jonas, and one thing is that I donated in because I wanted to, not because this was going to pass now. So the donations has been made. So, thank you, and is there any questions for me while I'm up there? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can go back.
So is there anyone else in the council like to comment on the proposed variances before us? As there's no one, we'll call a question.
I'll move staff recommendation, seconded by speak to it.
Seconded by Councillor French.
Thank you. So I'm supporting this, and this is, from my perspective, one of the places where variances are appropriate, where we have Squamish some very difficult geographical situations that we're trying to, landscape forms, where we're trying to build buildings, and this is not without precedent. I can remember similar applications coming from homes along Rock Ridge and also from homes in the newer part of Crumpet Woods, where the subdivision was there, everything looks great in 2D, and you actually start to try and shape the building around the land. There's little tweaks here and there that are required. So this to me is along the same lines. I'm supporting it partly because of that, and also because in my mind, excuse me, it's a relatively small variance and relatively minimal distances. And the other thing was mentioned, if you look at the overhead, it's at the end of the street, and so the impact on the surrounding neighborhood, in my view, is minimal of this, and so I feel this is an appropriate use of the variance procedure, and we'll be voting in favor of it.
I have Councillor French, followed by Councillor Stone.
Yeah, I too support this, and I'll go even deeper into history beyond what Councillor Race has pointed out, and Skyline Drive has a number of homes that have very steep slopes that were built in the 1960s, 1970s. And I acknowledge the concern of the residents who have voiced their thoughts on this. And I think the compromise that we're seeing here is acceptable. And I think this street is going to be quiet enough that issues around driveway length and number of vehicles for these 6 properties is totally manageable under, under this proposal.
Yeah, I'll also be supporting the motion that's on the floor. I want to thank staff for, I did send some questions in advance, particularly around some concerns that I had with the impact that it might have on the public space and the access to the road and safety considerations with the sidewalk. So I'm really happy to see that it's not impacting the sidewalk on that side of the street. I was up there yesterday, and where that variance has been given to the 20 duplexes, as well as on the townhomes, you have cars that are basically hanging off the end of the driveways up there. And so there is consideration there as we move forward about the impact that has on the feel of streets. But I'm happy to see here that it hasn't actually impacted, or it hasn't crossed over onto where that sidewalk is and the transition between the driveway and the actual user experience within that neighborhood. So thanks for bringing forward that additional information.
Does anyone else to speak to this? I'll go. I'll be supporting this as well. I think that I like the fact that it's a creative solution to minimize the amount of structure required there. I think the end of the street, they're all going to be in similar spacing. There's still lots of room in the driveway. The majority of the build structure is going to be below road grade, so the chance of having adverse effect to the surrounding community from a sightline point of view, yeah, I have no problem supporting this variance. So I guess on question, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries.
So we're now on to bylaws, section 8. Council, you have the option here of entertaining third reading on 1080 Wilson Crescent. Council Rice.
I'll move it.
Third reading moved by Council Rice, seconded by Council French. Council Rice.
Thank you. And I'm going to support this. And I have to admit personally that as this process has evolved, I went from originally being kind of, holy smokes, what is this? To kind of, I guess, engaged by the challenge of it. I'm not sure if that's the right phrase either. But anyway, it is a challenge. There's no question about this. And it's something new for the district. In my experience, I can't recall a zoning application quite like this. It is, I guess, somebody's solution to one of the challenges of housing we face, and perhaps lessons learned in this particular application can be applied in other parts of the district. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But I think from my perspective, some of the community issues that we dealt with, the earlier challenges that were identified seem to have been resolved, and so I am happy to support this.
Comments, Council French.
Like I said the last time this was before us, I think this is a creative housing solution for Squamish, and I think that it's a bold development. I know that I don't think I would like to live in this particular house. However, somebody will, and I hope that it serves as a lovely home. So I'll be supporting.
Councilmember.
I'll be supporting this one. I think it's a creative use of the land, and I'm sure that other people have looked at that land and not seen a solution. So I'm impressed that we've got to this point. It's going to be a really cool little structure in that neighborhood, and I think it's a great addition. So I'll be happy to support it.
Councilor Henderson.
I'll be in support of this as well. I believe that it is a good fit with the recently concluded neighborhood plan for the Wilson Crescent area. That neighborhood plan speaks to the varied character of the neighborhood. And character is what comes off the page for me in reading that plan. I also note that it seems to have been a 4-year journey at least for the applicant in this process. And finally, I think that our district has come a long way on railway proximity guidelines and paying attention to them and taking them into account. And I see that reflected in the back and forth between staff and the applicant. So that I think that CN should not be displeased at the attention we're giving to consideration of the railway proximity guidelines.
Any comments? Councillor Stoner and then Councillor Beaty.
I'm also supportive of this motion. I think it is definitely creative, it's unique. I think it starts to add diverse housing forms in Squamish that are needed. I will recognize that there are still a few challenges that the proponent will have to go through, in particularly working with BC Hydro. So I wish you luck on that process and just making sure that you keep forefront. There are some important considerations there when you do go to build, so good luck with it.
Councillor Beaty.
So I have been somewhat challenged by this project when I think about the amount of proponent and staff resources that have gone into this, and while I appreciate the efforts to accommodate and so on, I do have to wonder, if maybe it's better to get to a quick no and allow people to move on rather than go for 4 years, or I think it was mentioned. However, saying that, a lot of work has been done in this, and the house, it seems quite nice now that all this has been dealt with, so I will be supporting this, but I hope, I think there's an opportunity to rethink how we approach this sort of thing in the future.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay, so under staff reports, we had some recommendations that were missed from the December 18th, 2018 regular business meeting. Staff recommendations that council approve the following grant in-kind applications, which is the minor hockey club at $5,000 and the skate club, Sea Sky, $22,882.50. And then item with note, which is reflected in the minutes that you got. Is that how it all works? Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Race. Any comments? All those in favor? Vote. Motion carries. So on the consent agenda, Council, is there any item that Council needs to remove from the minutes or correspondence? Councilor Patton.
I wanted, from correspondence, wanted to pull 3, 5, and 6.
Okay. Any others?
I had item 6 on my list as well, so.
Okay. Okay. So, those get moved under action, under correspondence, okay? Number 12. So, motion to approve the consent agenda with those items removed. Moved by Councilor Anderson, second by Councilor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So under correspondence, so I'll deal with the 2 that are currently on our agenda. The letter from Singh UBCM, the Small Communities Fund, that council consider a contribution of $204.88 towards the UBCM FCM Small Communities Capital Fund.
I think that's a great initiative, and happy to support it.
I'll move it.
Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Stoner. Any other discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And then we had another letter about cat licensing, that correspondence from M. Soroski dated February 3rd. Be referred to the Director of Community Services for a response. Moved by Councilor French, seconded by Councilor Race. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Okay, we'll come back up to the letters that were pulled by council. Item 3, Councilor Pettingill from Mayor Bumstead in Dawson Creek.
So I wanted to thank Mr. Bumstead for his letter and just focus on one piece. He talked about the contributions that those who work in the oil and gas industry make to their communities and how they care about their communities. And I suspect Mr. Bumstead and I have different feelings about the oil and gas industry possibly, but I think from my perspective, one of the reasons for urgency around climate change and a shift to other things is concern about the economic viability and the future for these people who do care about their communities and want to contribute a lot, and whether or not we're going to be able to have a long-term stable employment for these people and a viable future. And so I just want to I guess just highlight that I think at the end of the day we are in many ways looking for the same thing. We have different ideas about how to get there, but I think again, concern about these very people is part of the reason for some of the concern around climate change.
We also pulled letter 5, the Bjorkman, Garibaldi, and Cornish environmental concerns.
Yeah, and I just wondered if this is the sort of thing that we ought to refer to staff in case the proposal moves forward, just to make sure that these things do get considered in staff deliberations and working with the working group, or is that just something we don't really need to refer to make that happen?
How does that work? Ms. Arthur's on items letters that we get that may not be for an active proposal, but may come one?
Council's desires to refer to staff to hold on to in case it moves ahead, we'll do that. Okay. We'll do that for the action.
So I'll move to refer to staff.
Move to refer to staff, moved by Councilor Pettingill, seconded by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. And then who wants to take on the crosswalk at Eagle Run Park that we got from T. Jenkins? Is that right if I go to Councilor Hertzberg?
I'll take that one. Thank you. This is something that's close to me. I grew up in that neighborhood and I still live nearby. The access they speak about is from Eagle Run Park, which has a full play structure and is used by the community. And another piece used by the community is the green space. It's just on the other side of the dike. And running from the park to the beach, effectively, you go across this road, which earlier efforts from the district have. I'm trying to remember what it's an active transportation route or a neighborhood way. So it is a 30K zone, but there's a bit of a parking thing there. There's cars on the street. There's kids running, and it's a very established. Well, we'd call it if it was animals doing it, it'd be called a game path, but it's a very busy stretch across there, and I think anything we can do to highlight that would be great. And there's so I would love to send this to staff as a recommendation to see what they can do to improve that situation.
So refer to staff for the active transportation. Moved by Councilor. What's your name? Herford. Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Race. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Thank you for that. Councilor Pettingill.
Yeah, I had a question process-wise about this, and so when requests like this come in, it's arguably a smaller project. Is a referral, like letter to council and a referral to staff the best way, or is there a normal process where suggestions and ideas can come in and get integrated into our planning? Just wondering if someone can speak to how that can or should work in general, if there is such an answer.
Through the mayor, I don't know that there's a better process than the one we have, because we get between this and intersection improvements and signs, I'm guessing dozens, if not hundreds of these a year. We can't address them individually, it's simply not possible. So we look for patterns, we aggregate them, I mean, in some cases, yes, we can respond individually when it identifies an issue that needs immediate attention, but otherwise it sort of just needs to go into the process along with everything else. It gets flagged and okay, well, it'll get reviewed against everything else that's sort of currently on the docket. But I don't know that there's a better way that we can ask the public to filter its comments through this.
Councillor Race?
Yeah, thank you. And I tend to agree with Mr. Buxton. And in my experience, these things are better going through at some point a staff filter. Because if we try to come up with a solution off the floor and on the fly, that very often doesn't lead to productive results in my experience. So for me, it's a default almost to staff first, and sometimes we'll ask staff, give them specific instructions depending on the issue, bring something back within a certain period of time, or look at this and provide certain information. But generally speaking, to run it through the staff filter is usually, in my experience, the most productive way.
All right, go ahead. So we have approval of minutes, recommendations from the February 12th Committee of the Whole, that staff be directed to pursue option 1, daily bylaw, comprehensive update, engagement study, and work plan as outlined in the staff report, and that staff bring back to future council meeting options outlining temporary solutions which address commercial usage within the business park. Moved by Councilor Stormer, seconded by Councilor Herbert. All those in favor? All those carried. Now this is the blue handout with the correction to the December 18th regular business meeting minutes. So this is the comprehensive grant piece we approved earlier. So council, that we approve those motions. Is that right? Yeah. As corrected. Moved by Councilor Stoner, seconded by Councilor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none. We have council received the advisory committee panel minutes from January 17th. Moved by French, seconded by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor? Those motion carries. And that we received the minutes from the February 6th Public Art Committee. Moved by Councilor Stoner, seconded by Councilor French. All those in favor? Those motion carries. Council staff in-camera announcements. So, council received a number of letters today about the decision made on this. So I wanted to pass our decision as done, or council has the option as well to bring back the bylaw and amend it to add another member at large if you wanted to include all of the original members plus the new person appointed, or we just approve the decision that we made.
Already made that decision.
So yeah, this is already approved, so the following appointments are made. So one, we have to do this.
No, you don't vote on this. This is already done.
It's on the agenda.
Oh, it's just on the agenda. Okay, now I'm sorry for that. Didn't mean to confuse us. This is just an announcement. These are the people that council has appointed to the Small Park Committee. But given the letters we received today, if council wanted to pursue a bylaw amendment, this would be your time to do it. Okay.
Just a question of clarification. We added on someone new, and then we removed one person from previous, and that's why we have to amend the bylaw if we wanted to add a fifth person back on. Is that
correct? Because the members at large are in the bylaw currently are at a set number of 4. And we had 5 applicants this time.
Maybe this is a question to Councillor Anderson as the chair for the Smoke Blast Committee, but how were the 4
members selected.
Councilor Anderson is the chair,
Oh.
he's the council representative on that. And these members were selected by council. We'll close the agenda. And we'll bring these forward to Councilor Pagel?
Just given the letters, I guess what I'm trying to wrap my head around is more directors better? Can people participate and contribute even if they're not a director? Do you need to be a director to add benefit to this committee and to have a say in their voice?
Ms. Arthurs?
Thank you, Mayor Elliott. Members of the meetings are open to the public. So anybody can attend and participate at the invite of the chair to the table. You can't vote if you're not a member, so that's an impact, and you can't participate in a closed meeting. And Smoke Bluffs often has closed portions to their meetings, so a member of the public can't participate in that.
Councilor Anderson?
I would just like to acknowledge I'm going to use the word extracurricular, but the above and beyond regular meetings at the Smoke Bluff Park. West Staven has been an outstanding contributor to the work of the Smoke Bluff Park Advisory Committee, and not necessarily at meetings. There's different things going on up in the trails and in the field on weekends. Just want to acknowledge West Staven's role and suggest, as per the context that Robin Arthurs has provided, that there should be ample opportunity for Mr. Staven and any volunteer to contribute, and we can continue to contribute to the work of the advisory committee.
Thank you. Any other comments, Council? Councilor French?
My feeling is that there's a great deal of support for Mr. Staven being reinstated on this committee. And I think it's sufficient enough that I would support having him added, whatever it takes to make that happen.
Councilor Riggs?
Yeah, well, generally speaking, my recollection of the minutes of the Smoke Bluffs Committee, and I've never served on it, is that they very often, in fact most often, don't have a full complement showing up. So I don't think adding another member is going to hurt the process at all. It may help the process. And so I would support amending the bylaw to allow a fifth person, fifth director at large.
So that's moved by Councilor Riggs, seconded by Councilor Stone. Any other comments, Council? I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. So staff will bring back an amended bylaw that will enable a fifth member at large, and then that appointment will come back to council. Thank you to the community for their letters. We do listen. No unscheduled public attendance. Any open question period clarification related to the agenda?
How many letters did you guys receive, by the way?
I was in meetings all afternoon. I saw my email go ding, 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 ding. Well, I can't tell you that, but staff might be able to.
Actually, a dozen,
Maybe more.
So 1,000?
A dozen.
No.
There goes the headline.
1, 2, 12.
All right, any council or staff announcements? Council, do anything interesting? Councilor Anderson?
I see that Destination BC will be making a presentation being hosted by Tourism Squamish at the Adventure Center. Unfortunately, it conflicts with our scheduled council meeting for next Tuesday, but I wonder whether we might be able to facilitate getting a copy of their presentation copied to council, just by way of friendly correspondence. It looks very interesting, the report they're going to be presenting next Tuesday.
Who would be, who's our contact with Tourism Squamish?
Kate,
I can do it.
we'll have the CAO follow up with Kate to see if she can secure that presentation. And I imagine that someone from staff will be attending that. Any other updates? Councilor Penfield, did I see your hand?
Well, I just want to, I'm a little bit nervous, but quite excited about tomorrow evening and the discussion about the budget and sort of our first collective outing as a council, meeting with the public.
You're trying to sell it more, Councilor.
No, I'm excited.
Do you want to talk about the time of that?
Oh, it's 4:30 at the Ledge tomorrow. Please come and join us. Until 7:30. We just go, yes, childcare, we got it all. Thank you. I was waiting for someone to bring it on. Councilor Frank.
I'll share with council that on Monday, February the 11th, there was a celebration of the life of Michael Lyons. It was packed. Mike had many friends before he left us, and they all gathered to remember him and the difference that he made in our community. So I was very pleased with the attendance and the memories that were shared, and equally sad that Michael's no longer with us. And then looking ahead, on Saturday, February 23rd, we'll be celebrating the life of Chris McCrum at the West Coast Railway Heritage Park. I believe that starts at 1 o'clock, and we'll be hearing more about the details of that over the next couple of days.
Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it. Any other comments? All right. I don't have any. I'm just looking forward to tomorrow evening. So yes, it is 4:30 to 7:30 at the Ledge, and refreshments will be there, and it really just a chance for people to come out and meet 7 of us and listen to some music and ask questions about our strategic plan or our budget or anything else, because we'll be there wanting to talk to people. So with that, I will have a motion to terminate. Moved by Councilor Hurd, second by Councilor Stoner. All those in favor, opposed, motion carries.